You smell what the Rock is cooking.
Acknowledge me.
You don't know what hard times are, Daddy.
We are bad to the bone. Get it? Bad to the bone.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
I'll fight anybody who do you want. Just let me fight him.
Let me tell you something, Jim Ross.
Mega power, yeah.
We got it for you.
We are the best of the best.
Woo! Wheeling dealing.
Smart marks.
And that's the bottom line, cause Stone Cold said so.
Welcome to Talk 'em in the Building, a podcast where we analyze a pro wrestling promo from all angles and all aspects. Here we talk about the talkers, we hype the hype man, and we pontificate upon the promo. For those return listeners, thanks for joining us tonight. And new listeners, you're in for a treat. Or is that maybe a trick tonight? You're going to join us on a special edition of Talk 'em in the Building. We're going to look at the creepy crawly side of the promo, looking at those promos that gave us goosebumps, but not in the kind of way that those 90s books did. We're going to dive into Halloween. All right. I'm Adri, your lucha libre aficionado, and I'm joined by the homies, my wrestling compadres, Adrian and Greg. What's going on, fellas? What's going on with Halloween? What are the memories of Halloween and pro wrestling crossed over? Adrian, how are you? And tell me about Halloween and pro wrestling for you.
I'm good, man. Halloween has always been that is my favorite holiday. Everyone who personally knows me knows that. I am steadily planning this Halloween party right now. Greg, of course, fall through. We're going to have fun. We're going to be playing a big screen projector behind the house. We're going to showing old school corny horror movies, beer pong, all of that stuff, all that debauchery. But my favorite part of Halloween is obviously dressing up. People have seen me dress up as Macho Man. It's been Hogan. I've been Sergeant Slaughter. You know, it's just one of those excuses to look completely ridiculous and have fun while doing it. So this year, I'm going to be our boy Mick Foley. I'm going to be Mankind.
Woo!
Nice.
And Miss Mitchum will be Undertaker. So,
wow.
And if I drink enough, we may recreate Hell in a Cell. I don't know yet. I don't know. But I always look forward to it. It's my favorite holiday. Hands down, man. Hands down.
I love it.
Nice.
I love it. And it's one of mine too. So I want to see those pictures. I know your Macho Man costume was pretty on point. So
yeah, man.
You just needed some Slim Jims there. That's about it.
Yeah.
Greg, how are you doing, and how's Halloween for you?
Man, I'm good. I love Halloween, man. It's one of my favorites as well. I enjoy the whole dressing up part. I like giving out candy. I like walking around with the kids.
Definitely.
I just enjoy seeing everybody out having fun and kind of slipping into those alter egos. And from a wrestling standpoint, I've only dressed up as one wrestler one time, and that was at work.
Okay.
And that was as John Cena.
Oh,
and I had the spinner belt. I had everything else. I even shaved. And people were lost their minds. So, yeah, I even went down that whole path. And it was like, I promise you I haven't shaved since. But I did shave that one time as John Cena. My number one costume for Halloween, though, from growing up to today, has been Batman.
Nice.
I think I've been Batman probably 4 or 5 times. I love Batman. I was Pac-Man one time.
Nice.
I was Tigger.
Okay.
And so I know you guys on video can't really see me. I'm not a small person, so I was a big ass Tigger. And then and even went to the liquor store in the Tigger outfit. So that got a lot of pops right there, no doubt.
Right on.
But no, it's so much fun to see people out there. And I will say, it's just like when you walk through the mall today and you see somebody in an AEW shirt or a Impact shirt or a WWE shirt. Doesn't matter, you acknowledge them. I always acknowledge those kids when they walk through and they're dressed up as a Roman or a Cena or an Undertaker.
Definitely.
You got to acknowledge them every single time. And one of the cool things that I noticed, like we would go out in public, like some of these festivals or something, and you would see kids dressed. And I'd be, hey, can I take a picture of you? Those kids lose their minds. Yeah. Those kids are always like, of course. And those parents are like, and almost every time those parents look at me and go, thank you.
Right,
because the kids, like especially Spider-Man, man, they kick into their little pose or whatever, and it's always so cool. So man, that's what I think is cool about it. Is it's great for the adults, it's great for the kids, It's just a fun family thing, but you can have a lot of adult debauchery with it as well.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, it crosses all the boxes, right? And especially now where it's so well accepted, like you're saying, it's families. You see these family costumes. Those are one of my favorite things to do. I used to live in more of an apartment building or a place where there was more traffic for Halloween, and I always loved the homemade costumes, the costumes that everybody just made their own. But for sure, the pro wrestling costumes always got the full size candy bar for me that I kept in the back stash. Here you go. Here's your, and I'm so looking forward this year to what kind of costumes we see this year. But fondest memory is very similar. As an adult, just having fun with it. But when I was younger, my mom, she would make my costumes. She was a seamstress, so I was a dinosaur and I was a Power Ranger. I was a Ninja Turtle. I always had the best costume on the block because she literally made it from scratch. Nice. And it wasn't none of this nonsense that was a plastic thing. Never dressed up as a wrestler as a kid, though. I think I missed the mark because I kind of fell back in love, truly in love with it when I was a teenager. By then, I wasn't trick-or-treating anymore. But it's always fun. It's a great time, and it's usually become one of my favorite holidays. And as you can tell, I got a couple of Care Bears up here. You can see them. We already got it over here set up with the little ducklings over here. So I'm set. I'm hyped. I'm hyped for tonight, everybody. Glad you're joining us. It's going to be a great show. And we got some spooky, some scary, some funny pro wrestling promos to dig into that just happen to have to do a little bit with Halloween or something, along those lines. So without any further ado, I'm going to kind of dive into some of these promos for tonight. But before I do, I want to remind the listeners here, give us a like if you're enjoying the content, subscribe, comment. We love to hear what you have to say. Some of our most listened, episodes here. We love hearing the feedback. Enjoy that. You're enjoying the conversation, and we like to make it a two-way conversation. So if you want to reach out, put a comment in the YouTube, in the comments or anywhere else where you listen to us, drop us a line. We got an email, we got social media. You can find us pretty much anywhere on our descriptions here. So shout us out and tell us how we're doing. We like to hear back from what you're saying. So we're doing these themed episodes, but we're a growing podcast and we're open to trying new things. We've tried the themed characters. We've tried, a podcast around a pro wrestler itself and errors. And that's certainly a concept we want to come back to. But we're open to ideas. So whatever you want to listen to, shout us out. All right. But back to the podcast, back to the Halloween episode. And we're going to dig in with, I'm going to call it an oldie because quite frankly, at this point, if anyone that has picked up wrestling in the last couple of years, this is probably something you had to dig up. Once upon a time, there was a pro wrestling video podcast called Being the Elite. It doesn't exist the same way anymore. And at least for a good generation of pro wrestling fans, along with, the 2011 Punk promo, these were some cornerstone little pieces that kind of dug in the hardcore fan and slowly brought people in just because it presented an alternative. Here, I'm going to give you a Cody Rhodes promo. One that is a little foul-mouthed, to be quite frank, but it talks about one of the greatest horrors of a pro wrestler.
You guys want to hear a fucking story?
Yeah,
Marty. Yeah, Marty. You want to get fucking scared, Marty? Yeah. Okay. This right here is the tale of the independent contractor. Oh, you scared, huh? Is your dick flaccid? Are you scared, huh? How about this? 260 something days on the road. Yeah, you're fucking scared. Yeah, you're fucking scared, man. What about you, huh? Look at that dick, huh? Oh, yeah. Oh, how about this? No health care. No. What? No health care? No. Huh? You scared? Marty, you fucking scared? Huh? Oh, okay. What about this? You guys know Christmas? Yeah. I know Christmas. You know Christmas? Yeah, Christmas. Guess what? Shut up. You'll be on a fucking plane. Oh, no! No, that's too far. That's too far. That's too far, Cody.
I want to release.
No release.
All right, Greg, I'm going to come to you first because it sounds like you had some familiarity with being the elite for sure.
I mean, being the elite was hilarious. I mean, to me, it was like without Zack Ryder's true long, you know what I mean? Whatever, his Long Island true story, whatever you call that thing. Without that, that's the precursor to being the elite to me. Like this was taking Zack Ryder's thing to the next level with a whole group having fun, getting together, making fun of other stuff, making fun of their own pushes and all that, right? I mean, just that right there. Oh, let's talk about what's scary. And they're making fun of WWE, but they're not just making fun of WWE. They're making fun of the industry as a whole. And they're oh no, you're going too far. Give me my release, which is hilarious. But I mean, yeah, I think that's a perfect snippet of what being the elite was. And also you start to see even in that the charisma that Cody had. And you see that he had command, he had delivery, he had timing. Everything that he had going on right there is what you see today. But just the way he presented it, hey, my scary story is all true, and it's just like, yeah. And guess what? Sorry, everybody, it's still the same in AEW. Even though that first press conference they said we're gonna give everybody health care and all that, it's still the exact same. But as nothing has changed. But at the end of the day, it is a scary story. But you know, it's wild. I think that's pretty entertaining though. Their reactions, just hearing the comments in the background. I think that's the key part. Is those little comments in the background. That's what's puts that over the top. Not just Cody's delivery, but all those little snippets from Hangman and Marty and all these
little
others.
Peppering, right? Yeah.
Little ad libs, for sure. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and I think that's a piece of it, right? It's that that you said it's the cohesive, the collaboration. You can tell they were just throwing things at the wall and seeing what would stick without any consequence because there was so much goodwill towards what this was because it was still small. It was still punk, underground, DIY, grassroots. Adrian, what did you think about the promo?
Nah, it was hilarious, man. One thing about being the elite that I really gravitated through too was the fact that not only did you get to see behind the scene of them traveling the roads and meeting fans and that sort of thing, but like Greg said, it gave them the opportunity to just play around, man, show their personalities off. A lot of those guys that would be on Being the Elite, their kayfabe character was a certain way, but you would catch them on Being the Elite, and it's a completely different personality. And maybe it's more true to them. That's what I would think watching it. But it let those guys let their hair down, have fun. They actually got a lot of stuff over, a lot of gimmicks over that still survive to this day. Like that whole FTR. I mean, fuck the revival. I mean, that's literally that team's name now because that was a whole gimmick from Cody of having his coffee cup and it would say it and little Easter eggs and that sort of thing. Like it, Adam Hangman Page being an alcoholic, that Being the Elite created that whole gimmick. Like, and that still goes on somewhat to this day. So it's a lot of that stuff that really, like you said, Adelaide, it was punk rock. It was underground, so we all gravitated through it and we championed it because it was the alternate. It was the alternative to WWE. It was the alternative to what we've been used to, and we wanted to see it succeed, and that's part of the reason why AEW kicked off the way it did.
Oh yeah,
a lot because of Being the Elite.
And to jump in on what you just said, like it got some angles over, it got some characters over. But if you really think of Being the Elite, it developed characters. Without that, the Bucks don't become what they become. Omega doesn't become what he became. Hangman sure as hell doesn't become what he became. nor does Cody.
Definitely.
And so being the elite, to me, influenced the business on a whole different level. And actually, we all have our feelings about AEW wherever they are. We all know they have some of the best wrestling in the world. There's no doubts about that, right? In-ring work. A lot of debate about storylines and character development. And if you go back and look at being the elite, that was the foundation of AEW.
Mm-hmm.
And those characters walked into AEW built off of a little YouTube show.
Yep.
And did more character development than WWE was doing at the time and or the AEW does today. Like at the end of the day, they were building characters and they were building reputations. And like you said, they may have had the kayfabe character, but then they started to blend it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come out of that, they build AEW, they do All In, go to build AEW based off of that popularity with SCU, with the Elite, with the Bullet Club, with all these others who happen to be coming in and out of it. And then think about what they got away with.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, FTR, but the New Day was on it too.
Yeah,
that's true.
When they were doing that hard push to sign them, E3.
Yeah, when they did a whole thing, yeah, they were at the video game thing and all that kind of stuff, and they went back and forth and all kinds of little things, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, and I would argue, you look at being the elite, and New Japan was on fire, and when being the elite started to fade away, so did New Japan in the States.
Buzz. Yep.
You hit it on the head. I mean, we could go on for days for like that whole era, which is to me really it is an era, right? It's a moment in time, and it's set up. It's set up everybody, and who knows if things don't happen the way that WWE is like beyond on fire. Let's just call it what it is, right? But to me, kind of what struck out is something that you mentioned, Greg, is this idea of character development, right? Here we have Cody, who is still, he's doing the very, very dressed up look. He's coming out and, looking like $1 million, but he's leaning into this goofy character that, to be quite frank, if we go back a little bit, he was somewhat touching on in the JBL and Cole show, the other YouTube show that for me gets underappreciated because it was, it was a throwaway show, but he was developing, but now it's with this idea that I am one of the cornerstones of this group now, and I can do goofy, I can do serious, because ultimately what I'm doing is I'm developing who I am, and the fans are going to be very forgiving about who I am. The Young Bucks, before all this happened, were the more hated groups in pro wrestling, right? They were
absolutely
legitimately not liked. Yeah. They were seen as cocky. There was Omega was kind of off in Japan. If you follow New Japan, you saw this whole thing. Just let them have a great time and let them see another side of their personality. That comparison to Ryder is so apt because it's through these shows, when done right, that we see, oh wow, you're very talented, you're very funny, you're very good at putting something together creatively. And for me, this is just kind of that. And it's Halloween and we're talking about that, but they took this whole episode that I pulled this from is a Halloween episode. They did it again the next year with more of a budget for sure. But this is again punk rock, and that's what makes it cool to me. I think they were on the Jericho cruise. You can hear the water in the background. I think that's where they shot this, and that's why it's so dark. But yeah, I think it's a moment in time for sure.
The one thing, one last thing about that particular clip, them kind of sitting around and the lighting reminds me of you holding the flashlight up underneath your face and all that. But what it reminds me of are those backstage interviews or backstage segments that ECW used to do. Like that real gritty, just kind of off the cuff, like they're almost like you're eavesdropping as opposed to them cutting a promo. And that's what it feels like when you're watching that Cody thing. It's like you're eavesdropping, like more so you're just watching it as opposed to him talking to you. He's talking to them, which is very different. You think about it, it's very different than, especially at the time that you the wrestling promo was at the camera or at that person. Yeah, this was more like I'm just kind of sneaking in, paying attention.
That's a good point.
And what do you do when you want to reinvent? You learn the format, which all these people grew up. I mean, Cody grew up living it, right? And that's the best thing, right? You learn the format like the back of your hand, and then you break it, and you redo it in your own style or whatnot. So I'm going to move on, and I'm just going to lean into kind of keeping that theme of the spooky, the scary, and really focus in on one of the great modern talkers. You know, we're talking about the pro wrestling promo, talk them in the building, right? And this is truly someone who talked them into the building. You know, God rest his soul, but Bray Wyatt. And Bray Wyatt was one that really hooked you in. And if we're talking about Halloween and we're talking about spooky, the minute he did that backwoods promo, right? The minute he's on that rocking chair, I'm in, right? This promo is that I'm going to give you guys tonight. It's a little bit further along, but for me, if I had to put it on a highlight reel of promos that Bray Wyatt ever did, this isn't the spookiest, but it feels like the one that really put him over the top at some point. And this is the promo that he does responding to the Shield, who's in the ring looking like the most powerful force in the industry.
I admire your courage. Surely, normal men would lose sleep at just the mere thought of dancing with reapers. With war, justice, that's y'all's game. I dig it. I like games too. War, ooh, that's my favorite. My soul smiles at just the thought of your quivering hands waving those white flags high in the air. You reap what you sow. You three boys picked a beautiful hill to die on. I would advise y'all to be careful inviting the devil in your backyard, because he may just like it and decide to stay. Run.
Adrian, I'm going to come to you first. Think back, take yourself back 10 years ago, because I can't believe it's been 10 years.
That's crazy.
Where does the time go, right? Impressions, the Shield, Bray Wyatt and the family.
Like you said, it's crazy that that's been a decade ago, because I definitely remember that era. That was when the Shield was finally like a considered baby face, because they were so over. And you have this Wyatt family clan just coming out, and it was just such a contrast in what both of those groups really meant to that company at that time. And like I said, I mean, the Shield baby faces, we all knew Roman was going to be the guy, but there was still a good amount of us that were behind Dean Ambrose. A lot of us were behind Seth. But on this other end, with the Wyatts, it was all about Bray Wyatt, and it was all about him just being this disruptor, essentially. That was his whole character. That was the whole family's gimmick. I always used to love how their promos were put together, because Rowan wouldn't say anything. And it was so effective. It was so effective of just leaving him to be the one to say, run. And because that, it was nothing else that needed to be said. And Luke was so underrated. Like, people didn't really really appreciate those few lines that he gave us. That was beautiful, man. That was like, man, this is some
poetic.
This is a movie, man. This is a movie I'm watching right now. And I just love that gimmick of the Wyatt family. I just really hate that. I'm not going to blame Vince, but I kind of want to, that he threw so much at that it just became convoluted. Yeah. You should have just kept it as a backwoods cult that's scary as hell, with their leader that's so eloquent, but he's big, he's fast, he's scary. Like, it was perfect. But, c'est la vie. Rest in peace to both of those guys. That's a terrific choice, man. That was very creepy. And that was an awesome match. It was highly anticipated. I definitely, before I passed the mic, I definitely remember the first time both of those teams were in the ring and how everyone was just locked in and just pumped up to watch what was going to happen.
Yeah, and you said it yourself. I mean, everybody was expecting it. This was just that last cherry on top. Like, get ready. This is gonna go, and it's gonna go hard. Greg, what are your thoughts on the promo and kind of the memories of this era, this kind of time frame?
So one thing about that, so we're talking Halloween, we're talking about horror, scary. So I'm that person that when we talk about horror movies, I'm not a slasher movie. I mean, I like the Freddy Krueger, but I'm not a big slasher movie person. I love the psychological killers. I love the ones that you get done watching it and you're like disturbed. Like you have to have a drink of wine, right? You're like, holy crap, what just happened? Like I didn't see that coming. I like that person. And that's what drew me into Bray. Because it drew me in because I'm like, man, this is so as a kid, I love Jake the Snake. So everybody talks about him being very similar to Waylon Mercy, which is true. But there's a lot of Jake in there.
Definitely.
A lot of psychological words of war. And here he is. He's not Hogan built. He's not a Luger. He's not Sid. He's, stocky.
Right.
He is what he is. And you look across at who's standing in the ring. You got Roman. You got Dean, who's in really good shape at the time. You got Seth, they're all badasses.
Yeah.
And they're standing there. They're presented as badasses. And they had not been beaten. They've been run roughshod over
Running through
everybody.
everyone.
Here he is, not yelling, not even talking directly about them per se. He's like psychological. And even with Luke, with what he added in on the side, was like, oh, that's the enforcer. And he's the crazy one. He's the leader, but that's the crazy one. And I don't know what this one is over here.
Right.
And I'm like, man, that's what I loved about that presentation is it was just like, it was so deep. Oh, could you imagine if that group came around today under today's creative? Oh my God. I mean, even with what they're doing right now with the Wyatt 6, it is what it is, right? But if you took that psychological piece like that today, man, I just love that promo. That was so good. It's one of those ones that people could walk away going, I don't know that I like him. Like, even to that, at that time, 10 years ago, which while it's a long time ago, it's not that far ago, right? People were like, I'm not sure about him. He's a little crazy. And he wasn't a face right away. People knew he was different. Man, I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but man, he could have been that next Taker type. I mean, he could have been. Just watching that was just perfect for Halloween.
He should have been. That's just the bottom. Everybody saw it, right? Everybody witnessed it, and kind of to your end, I love these promos. I mean, who doesn't? But that are evergreen, right? You don't need to have context of what the beef was, what the era was, nothing. It doesn't even matter, how long they've been feuding. You're in. He sets it up. He tells you what you need to do. He sells a pay-per-view or the show, I guess, the match. And you're just drawn in again by the aesthetic, by the, they're chewing up the scenery. But at no point to me, kind of echoing what you guys are saying here, at no point does it feel goofy or corny. It's like, this guy's a stone cold killer.
Yeah.
This guy's a murderer. Like,
yeah.
He has the bodies buried and he's gonna dump some more in there,
And you know what I think about that promo, like you said, it's evergreen. So you think about, let's just go back old school for a second. You think about a Flair, and it's always like, well, that was entertaining. Or Hogan, watching it today. Like, do you go back and watch some of them? Okay, that's entertaining. Cena, that's entertaining. You watch Jake the Snake, I want to see what's next. You watch a Waylon Mercy, I want to see what's next. And that promo you just put out there, that's the one that you like, I want to see what's next. It doesn't just stand alone to say, oh man, that was awesome. It draws you into the point that even right now, even though I know it happened, it makes me want to see what's next.
Definitely.
And you could play that for somebody who's not a wrestling fan, who's a horror fan, and they can be like, I want to know what happened after that.
Yep.
Great. And like you said, the outcome that match was tremendous. It was like the Avengers of of pro wrestling, at least at the time. It was kind of, you know, so great. I'm glad we're on point with this. You know, I was honored that his memory and honor really kind of what we, you know, Adrian was alluding to, but honoring what could have been as well. If it given a fair shot, if they'd gone with the gimmick and truly honored the vision. But anyway, the past is in the past. And as we kind of segue here into the third promo of the night, and certainly not the last one, I did bring a fun one here to look at that I'll have you hopefully enjoy yourself. But we touched upon this idea of Bray Wyatt at one point being the heir apparent to Undertaker. So how can we have a Halloween episode without an Undertaker promo? Because the dead man, right? He started it all. He's the reason why a lot of kids in the early 90s were scared to turn off the lights. And it wasn't Chucky and it wasn't, you know, any slasher film. It was The Undertaker. And I think that's lost on a lot of us that we've grown up in The Undertaker and the various iterations. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I hope you guys are okay with that. I'm going to bring two short promos tonight. And the only reason I'm bringing them is because they're both spooky, they're both scary, but they're going to show us two very different iterations of what a child or a young person might have seen as The Undertaker. And for me, for my money, they're both valid in scaring the hell out of you. Can't have The Undertaker without Paul Bearer.
The Survivor Series, the coffin match. Most people, when they die, are placed into the coffin and they're buried, but they're already dead. In your case, Kamala, you're a very special treat. My Undertaker will defeat you and throw you into the coffin, but you'll still be alive. Oh, yes, you will. And then my Undertaker will slam the lid shut. And then all your fears will become reality. Oh, yes.
What a great set.
The coffin, though. It's the coffin that does it for me.
Kamala, this Wednesday night, as I beat you into a gruesome pulp and heave your rotting carcass into this coffin, your heart will be racing as I slam this lid shut. And as you try and gasp that last bit of air, you'll suffocate on your own breath. Kamala, you will not survive Survivor Series. Kamala, rest in peace.
Nice. I was legit watching that match this week.
Adrian, I love the fact that you have context for that, and I want to come to you. But Greg, I saw your reactions. You started reacting to even what I was reacting to with the set. What were your thoughts here on this early Taker promo?
So,
Earlier.
well, all right. The first thing that popped in my mind is like, okay, this is the one that has the Kamala paint on the lid, right? That's the first thing that popped in my head, because I thought that was the funniest thing ever is the fact that the actual coffin had the stars and the moon on it. I was like, that is hilarious. 1992, we've looked at some things before from that era, and I think it's just that it's the perfect skit, if you will, for that time frame. But kind of like we talked about with Bray, Taker's delivery is a little bit more Jake-ish, a little bit more that not yelling and screaming. Paul Bearer is over the top, a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more of that 1992 WWF-esque. But Taker, to me, is a mix. It's kind of a mix of that cartoony, how he looks and all of that, early 90s horror, but that delivery is a little bit different. It's just different. Different than what we saw from anybody else at the time. Even different than a Jake. And I keep going back to Jake because he was always that psychological, very monotone, very almost whispering type of a thing. And Taker kind of, I think, took from that. I love this whole thing. I think the way it was shot was cool. I thought the whole being in the workshop where they make the coffins was cool. But I think the really neat thing that they did is how they kind of turned it around to where the cameraman ends up in the coffin.
Yep.
And he shuts that door, and I'm like, oh, that was cool.
Great.
I forgot about that. It's like I totally forgot about
that. Yep.
But like the way he walked, the way he kind of moved around, he came out of the coffin and kind of went boom, and then he shuts the door on the cameraman. I'm like, dude, that was so good. Like I think it set up the match perfectly.
Yeah. That's great. I love it. Oh my gosh, I'm blown away. I didn't even catch that. That's a great attention to detail. Adrian, you're it's fresh in your mind now, having the recollection of the match. What was your thoughts on the promo?
How terrifying is it that a coffin is being closed on you? You're gonna suffocate. What is he saying? You're gonna suffocate. This is not gonna be enjoyable, bro. You're gonna suffer. You're gonna suffer. You're gonna suffocate, and you will rest in peace. Like, it's perfect. It was a perfect setup. And just put yourself in the eyes of that 8-year-old kid watching it. You're terrified. You're absolutely terrified. And that was the desired effect. So well done. Well done to all parties involved. Yeah. That's perfect. That's what I loved about pro wrestling. That's the kind of stuff that made me a fan. That's the kind of stuff that made me want to do a podcast like this, because I want to see more of that kind of stuff, man. I want to see that kind of stuff that gets you hyped for a match while getting you hyped for a character to either boo or cheer that person or whatever. Like, you're getting over a character, you're getting over a gimmick, you're talking that person into the building. You're talking that little kid, even though they're scared, they want to watch it.
Oh yeah.
They want to see what happens. So it's perfect. It's perfect. For me, it's perfect.
I hope that Warner Brother money, that Netflix money makes them start building some sets, is all I'm saying.
Correct. That's a fact.
So I told you I'm going to cheat a little bit because I want to take that idea of that 8-year-old and fast forward a couple of years, right? That 8-year-old is now maybe a middle schooler, maybe a high schooler, maybe even a college student. And I knew a few of them back in the day who were not wrestling fans by any means, but they loved The Undertaker. They absolutely adored The Undertaker because it fit a certain aesthetic. And Undertaker was very clearly had a ear to what popular culture was looking at, because this next promo ages with that same 8-year-old that you're talking about.
Has been joined. My agents of darkness are poised to unleash my reign of terror, World Wrestling Federation. All in the name of my master, McMahon. You think you have problems with Austin? Oh, but your problems, they've just begun. And the audacity. Do you actually think you can eliminate me with an Inferno match? Don't you realize there's some flames that can't be extinguished, and the Lord of Darkness is one of them? Soon, McMahon, you will realize that I am your worst nightmare. And by the way, tonight, I intend on showing you just how serious I am with my threat. Tonight, if you like, you could even call it a surprise. McMahon, the World Wrestling Federation, will be mine.
All right, here we go.
Legend, man.
The another era, right? Another reinvention. Adrian, I'm gonna come to you this time. So thinking about that thread that you were talking about, you saw the production. I know younger Undertaker. What are your thoughts now?
Same thing, but completely different experiment of production value. The music, the soundtrack alone elevates that promo. It elevates the intensity behind it. And I just always love the fact that, once Taker really put over that eye rolling thing, that was always something stupid or silly, but it worked. It got it over. It was, this is because he's supernatural. He got that over. You know what I'm saying? If somebody else did that, if someone did that to you at work, you're like, what the hell is wrong with this person? But because this 7-foot person that's, dressed in all black and talking like this and rolling his eyes back, it was a perfect presentation. It was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. Like I said, the subtle bell toll, the bell rings, the toll of the bell, that worked perfectly with that promo. And Taker did his job. He told you what the match is going to be. He told you, he consolidated the story as to what's going to happen. What's his motivation. And again, he talked you in the building. This is the reason why the Dead Man is arguably one of the GOATs.
Absolutely.
It's simple as that.
And apropos on Halloween, but kind of to Adrian's point, there's all these cues, right? These music cues, this very clear script, never looks at the camera. But Greg, we were talking about production value. Production value is the money's not there, but the money is on Taker. It's his promo to sell. Kind of what were your thoughts on it?
So it's interesting watching that one because it is so different, right? I mean, the production, but the presentation of the character is so different. But like you said, here's the 8-year-old watching the first one, and they grow up. So think about this: how he changed. Now, I didn't think about this at the time, but that's more what, mid 90s or late 90s, right?
Yeah,
somewhere in that area.
97.
Think about our society at that time. So you had Austin running the whole anti-authority thing, right? That appealed to the everyday man, that appealed to a lot of people who want to be like, oh, screw my boss and all that, right? But if you remember, and you may not because you're a little bit younger than me, but there's a large population of teenagers and older teenagers that were into the goth. It's a big goth type of movement. And they were anti-authority too. And so who was he talking to? McMahon. He was appealing to a different subset, the same way Austin did with anti-authority, with now my anti-authority. And now I'm going to be a little bit more gothic as opposed to cartoony or, shall we say, slasher type, whatever, right? He's not going to be more psychological, how he spoke. He left some mystery in what he said. But now he talks different. And like you said, the music in the background. But if you recall at that time, they also changed his music to the entrance. It had a little bit more acid rock to it, a little bit more guitar in it.
Yeah, it's probably
some other
my
stuff
favorite
to it.
Taker thing.
So you think about it, it's now appealing to a different audience. So I think what they did with the character was you had Austin over here with the everyday person. But now you got the Undertaker over here who is appealing to that gothic or to that rebellious kid or to that kid who's going, I don't like my parents or I don't like the authority either. But not necessarily an Austin guy, but I like Taker. Like he gets me. He's out there. He's much more psychological. So I think that's what was cool about that promo is it to me took me down a totally different path. When I'm watching that one, I'm thinking about Hot Topic back in the day. I'm thinking about Little 5 Points. I'm thinking about what Dragon Con was. I mean, all these different things when it was so gothic areas, right? And it was cool vibes, but it was a very different vibe.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's where it's taking me. I know you don't know what Little 5 Points is out of lead. I think Adrian has an idea what that is. But
that's the spot.
but you think about back then, it's very different. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm like, man, that's just where it took me. And I think that's where, from a Halloween standpoint, I think it's really cool to see that. But just from a societal standpoint, thinking about where we were, that was cool. That's cool. That's a cool contrast to that
It's a
same
really
character.
good point.
Too.
Really good point.
And yeah, no, definitely. Like it presented this whole aesthetic and persona. Like you had people who were, just idolizing these characters, especially the Undertaker, but idolizing him in a way that fit in to something else that they already like lived their life by, right? Which is this gothic, like dressing in dark, using like a lot of chains and whatnot. I grew up with these people that they didn't care about wrestling. They watched everything else because of it, but once he came back, I saw their hearts drop because he was Biker Taker now, but it wasn't their guy anymore. They still supported him and whatnot, but it wasn't the same. One little note is right after this is clearly one of my favorite eras of Taker, and it's funny because it happens when he joins McMahon and he does corporate ministry Undertaker. And it's kind of the opposite, right? Because then he just becomes another underling and does McMahon's like bidding essentially against Austin. But truly kind of a great era and a really cool kind of undertaking of the promo because he knows his character really well and he knew it through the ages. So I'll leave it at that. And you guys said it better than I did. So again, we can't have a Halloween episode without Undertaker because he spooked the hell out of so many kids growing up. I'm going to close this out for tonight and talking about pop culture. So many times they've tried to bring in Halloween into pro wrestling. WCW was famous for, they did like a terrible segment with Rick Steiner and Chucky once that just put over some movie that he was one of the later Chucky movies. It wasn't been early on, but I always talk about kind of modern wrestlers, and I didn't bring any of these promos, but I think of modern wrestlers that have embraced kind of the scary, spooky side because it's so mainstream. Greg talks upon how Hot Topic used to be this kind of niche place almost, and now it's like everybody can go to Hot Topic, and you don't feel a lot of peace because they're just so mainstream and so pop culture. But at one point they weren't. But I'm thinking of modern characters that kind of embrace that. So like an Abadon really kind of leans into that. I would say Danhausen is a crossover of Pee Wee Herman and Elvira. And Elvira did actually do a very early promo for Halloween Havoc with someone that we'll honor tonight. And again, rest in peace here.
Wow, Sting and Sid Vicious battled for the heavyweight title in Halloween Havoc 90. And this year, it's going to be shocking.
Prepare for Sting, Sid Vicious, Lex Luger, and more.
Woo! I got a charge out of that. How about you, Sid Vicious?
Sting, Halloween Havoc's gonna be one nightmare you'll never forget.
And neither will you.
Halloween Havoc 90, a live pay-per-view, Saturday, October 27th.
It's so good.
Nice.
It's so good. Okay, so definitely y'all have more context for this. I think you're well versed in this era. And Adrian, I'm going to come to you. What are those thoughts, if you have any, in terms of that era? Just your thoughts on Elvira and then Sid Vicious here. Come on.
Elvira was very talented. That's all I can. That's all I can say. I know I was definitely a fan as a young one. I was definitely a fan. I have nothing else to contribute to that.
It's enough.
Rest in peace, Sid.
Absolutely. Greg, I'm going to come over to you right away.
So when I watched that, I mean, Elvira, I think she may have been in more than one Halloween Havoc, but yeah, I remember that. And so what's funny about that, at the time, Sid was a horseman. So as we talk about dressing up and we talk about costumes, I can tell you the finish of that main event, Sting versus Sid. And all of a sudden Sting gets beat down and then Sid wins, and you look and you're like, wait, is that Sting? And it happened to be Barry Windham with a haircut, dressed up as Sting, doing the job for Sid Vicious because they were all horsemen.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as an imposter Sting, he was dressed up for Halloween, if you will, as Sting. And then, of course, that all got reversed. But yeah, that was the finish of that. Is that Barry Windham had cut his hair and everything, man, down to painted his face, looked just like Sting, and people did not know.
Wow.
You got to think about it. At that time. Yes, the bodies are different, but you think things are moving fast. And you're like, wait a second, what? And it was quick. But yeah, that's Halloween Havoc's had some interesting things over the years. There's no doubt. That one, but having Elvira there, pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, do you think about it now? Halloween Havoc's back. It's been back for the last few years. It's been a staple of NXT.
It's been fun too. They really took the gimmick and ran with it.
And then kind of jump back to when you said that about Chucky, and you think about, okay, that was crazy, right? That was a stupid thing in theory. And then later on, WWE had a thing with the zombie movies where the lumberjacks were zombies. And not that long ago, AEW had one with Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
This is true.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, money talks, y'all. Money talks. At the end of the day, they didn't do any of those for free.
Well, I heard something. Didn't they pay like $1 million? Some insane amount of money for. Maybe I'm overestimating, but it was a lot of money for those promos.
Yeah. I think there was the zombie one was way up there, and then I heard that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one was way, way up there. And I think they had donated that one to charity, if I'm not mistaken. That Tony Khan taking that.
I think that was
nice.
Fight for the Fallen.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But I mean, hey, at the end of the day, I mean, it's entertainment, y'all. Wrestling is entertainment, and if you can have these crossovers, and we just talked about our love for Halloween, our love for professional wrestling. One time a year they come together. I'm cool with it.
Yeah,
that's fast.
Make it goofy. Make it a special episode. Why not? They should do that more often. Well, I had a good time. I hope y'all had a good time, Greg and Adrian, and I hope the listeners had a good time. One of our favorite holidays, and we love doing these theme episodes because it gives us an excuse to not just talk pro wrestling in the promo, but really kind of dig in on some fun stuff here. So hopefully it was that for you. So for the night, we hope that the night brought you more entertainment than the Terror Twins taking out Dominic. And whether you're haunted by the Brothers of Destruction tonight or hear the footsteps in the dark from the dead man himself, remember to always follow the buzzards, unless you're one of the brave Canaanites who dares confront them. Keep an eye out for the ECW zombie crawling through your door, and don't forget the boogeyman hiding under your bed. And if all else fails, well, just channel a little Danhausen and put a curse on them all. Until next time, keep your lights on, and happy Halloween. Follow, subscribe, and comment. We want to hear from you here on the Talk 'em in the Building podcast. Good night, ghouls.